control, probably not the best word, how about reduce the size of the federal government? Because we are a country that was founded by 13 states that created the size of the federal government. So what I said on the campaign trail, I'm trying to live up to and we try to accomplish here as a member of this Congress, which is rein in waste, reduce error, ensure that you, as you sit here, know that you're safe and secure, that you know that whatever changes are going to come in a future healthcare program, that is going to be not the federal government's view of what your patient-doctor relationship should be like, but it's going to definitely facilitate an approach that is, you can make something free, but if it's not working, what have you accomplished? It'll not only be affordable, it will be based on the patient-doctor relationship in a market that insurance companies say that they can support this because it makes sense, and by controlling the waste, or the, if you will, the uncertainties that can occur in marketplaces when there is no plan. And there is a plan. What needed to happen first was that Secretary of Health and Human Services, Dr. Tom Price, needed to get confirmed because of the fact that his ability as the Secretary to create reform at that level, it's going to require less legislative effort going forward. So it's two entities working together, the Congress and Health and Human Services, along with the medical community. In fact, just yesterday, one of my most current meetings was with the medical community down in the Munson system, and talking to the dialogue with the providers as to what they need to be successful, what they need to offer that is the right services for a district like ours, which is largely rural. So when you think about putting together a healthcare program across the country, some people are going to look at it in an urban sense, some people are going to look at it as suburban. We're going to look at it in a combination, but largely rural healthcare. It has to be available. And as Ben said, there's no reason to fix something or eliminate something that isn't broken. It works to have your children be able to be on your healthcare insurance until they're age 26. It works to acknowledge pre-existing conditions. There are certain things that just made sense. Now we have to figure out a way to put the package together in a way that it doesn't implode on itself, which was happening right here, right now. You will see tax reform. You will see it soon. We're going to do 2 budgets this year, just so you know. In the first budget, there was a continuing resolution for 17, which we're in now. We'll be finishing up that budget within the next 60 days, and then we'll work on the 18 budget, so that by the 30th of September, we'll have something to send to be signed into law, because we need a budget. You can't run a business if you're just doing continuing resolutions, and we have to do it in such a way that it makes sense fiscally to accomplish the goals set by the administration, by the Congress, and working together. So, what's it like to be a new person in Congress? Well, if you're not ready to run a fast pace, you're probably going to just continue to fall behind, because things happen. One hour I'm talking about healthcare, the next hour I'm talking about the SULOCs, the next hour I'm talking about Veterans Affairs. You have to be able to have the people around you who are the true experts that can get you up to speed and be current on the myriad of subjects, so that you can have an intelligent debate and dialogue and come to consensus and get the decisions made. So there really weren't any surprises in getting there. Just as a Marine, I tend to look at things pretty matter-of-factly. Don't get too excited unless it's time to get excited. If it's time to get excited, it usually means something went wrong. as your pilot, if any of you flew on Northwest Airlines, nobody ever wants to see their pilot get excited. So if I seem like I just don't get excited, trust me, there's a lot going on in here. I am paying attention, but I'm paying attention for you. But I have to listen to you first. It's tough to listen in some cases if the venue is such that there's more people talking than listening. Or more, we are 6 weeks into our service area. We had to set up offices, which we did. One in Traverse City, one in Marquette. The Marquette office just opened this past week. We are going to bring constituent service to the people of the area here. You can't get down to Traverse City. I know you're not going to go to Marquette unless you happen to be up there on vacation. But we're going to have mobile constituent service that you know that we will be in a particular, well, for example, Alpena. We were there yesterday, and the Alpena Library offered their spaces for our people to come to. So when the schedule shakes out, you'll be able to see it on the website, that the second Tuesday of the month from 12 to 5 or whatever it's going to be, we know that we'll be in the Alpena Library. So people who we have to have a face-to-face if they can't get to us, we're gonna come to them. But as you know right now, most of the business you do in your personal lives or your business lives is done online. So you start with that process, get your issue into the system so that we can begin to work it. And if you have a legislative issue, come right to Washington, D.C. with that. That's our folks here in these offices are by and large dealing with constituent service issues that usually relate to a check or something from the government that hasn't arrived. That's the preponderance of constituent issues that are non-legislative. So that's where you talk to the local folks here, and we get it into the system and get a resolution for it. That's what we do. The job is representative, to represent you, to get the job done for you in Washington, D.C. and be part of a body that makes tough decisions, because if there were easy decisions, life would be a whole lot different. But these are tough decisions for the better involved. We have a lot of opportunities to excel. This is one of them that we can make a choice. We can choose to do it as a group, and we come together across party lines like our freshman class has promised to do, and is trying to set the example, or we can spend all our time just not trying to figure out a way for the betterment of all. May not be our 100% first choice, but it's definitely the decisions that will be made are for the betterment of all. So I'm looking forward to dialoguing with all of you in different venues as we go along here, and some will be like this. Some will be just, the congressman will be here at North Central on such and such a day, and it's going to be an open forum, and everybody's welcome, and here's where we're going to have it. And but we're planning a month, 2 months, 3 months out already, because this district is the second largest geographical district east of the Mississippi. I have 9 airports that I can fly into to do the business back in the district. So as you know, if I fly into Traverse City, the chance of me having a meeting in Houghton that afternoon are pretty slim. Okay, so we plan way out in advance. And I'll just close here and just talk just a second about the committees. Budget committee, which you've already heard. We are the architects of the budget. We don't tell people how much they should spend on Medicare or ships or education or whatever it happens to be. That's appropriations. Okay? We put the architecture, the big picture piece of total into that, figuring out if you have 2 kinds of spending, mandatory and discretionary. And it's not an unlimited source. Natural resources. There's no better committee based on what this district looks like and what our needs are, whether it be protecting our waters, protecting our wildlife, protecting our woods, but protecting them in such a way that we conserve those resources, utilize those resources for economic reasons as well as just pleasure reasons, because when you utilize your natural resources, you create jobs, you have a healthy economy, people can raise a family, they can live in a community, and that's how all that occurs. It doesn't occur if you do not utilize your forests, your waterways, your mining deposits, whatever it happens to be. It's to conserve those while you utilize them in a smart way. And lastly, Veterans Affairs. Michigan as a state has a higher than average percentage of veterans. The first district has double the percentage of veterans as other districts within the state. So we've already started to have hearings on the Veterans Affairs Committee. I happen to be the subcommittee chairman on oversight and investigations. Give you one example of one of the things we're dealing with right now is the Veterans Administration has numerous, I think the number is 12, IT systems, most of which don't talk to each other. Now, how do you think about if you're running a business and you couldn't communicate with your customers and you couldn't do, the interface is at best poor, if at all. So we've got a lot of challenges within the Veterans Administration to make sure that the benefits and the services that the men and women who have worn the cloth of the nation have earned, that they're provided for them in a timely manner, in a clear manner, and in such a way that it just makes sense, because they've laid it all on the line for us, and it's important for us. It's essential for us to do the same for them. So, having said that, there's a lot going on up here right now, and I find myself excited by the fact that I know we have a few questions that you had, and I'm gonna, when the questions come up, I'm gonna give you an answer. If you're ready, Carlin, let's go.
All right, I think I have this working. You didn't get to meet her earlier, so let me introduce my colleague Allison Hubbard from the Charlevoix Area Chamber of Commerce to you. So we made her go out and work in the lobby and address questions. She didn't get lunch, although I did see her eating a brownie. Somehow that got to her, but so I apologize. We'll eat afterwards. So. A lot of questions, Congressman, as you can imagine, on all sorts of things. And I'll start, and Allison has a few as well. Obviously, immigration reform is on people's mind, and kind of localizing the question, the talk of H-2B visas, which is a big employment issue for us in northern Michigan, in our agricultural communities, as well as our hospitality industries and those types of things. Rather than focusing on the illegal immigration issues, we'd like to talk about the legal immigration process and how we can reform or streamline the H-2B visa process in order to get more workers and better workers, or more workers here in northern Michigan.
Thank you. That's near and dear to everybody's heart, well, especially right now, because we're getting very close to the season where if our bureaucracies that control the issuance of all the paperwork were doing what they should be doing, we would have minor problems right now. We've seen too much bureaucratic delay and kicking the can down the road. So an immigration policy of any kind it has three elements. Number one, we decide as a country a total number and how many people are going to come into our country on an annual basis for whatever reasons. Then we set selection criteria for those seeking admittance to the country. And thirdly, we put together a set of enforcement rules, if you will, so that the first two are enforced and created. We need to increase the cap on the H-2Bs, I believe, as well as speed up the process. We have hundreds of thousands of good, solid folks who want to come here, they want to work, and guess what? They also want to go home. They're not coming, they're coming here for the economic opportunity, not to come here, to move here, to stay here. So our process needs to be defined, and it needs to be adhered to, but you cannot just let bureaucracy do it at its own time schedule. So I believe that we're going to see a kickstart And we're working this heavily right now in Washington, D.C. with the H-2Bs specifically because it affects our area. It's a hot topic.
Thank you, Congressman. The next question is on the Sioux locks. Expansion of the Sioux locks has been approved for many years to provide redundancy in the locks. Losing the 1,000-foot lock would be an economic catastrophe for all of us. How do we move from this approval to funding allocation to make this happen?
Well, number one, the Sioux locks may have started as just a project that was viewed as an economic basis that shipped goods through the locks so we could do our business. It's now a national security piece to it as well because of the fact of the world situation that we're in. So it has jumped up in the priority. We just authored a letter this past week and got support from the rest of the Michigan delegation to send to the president to re-emphasize the importance of the Sioux locks in the priorities of infrastructure as it relates to the entire country. So while it's a boon for the first district, it's really essential to the entire country, because if they shut down, then that's going to it could potentially put the rest of the country into a short-term recession. How do you do that? Well, the Army Corps of Engineers has to complete their study. There's some funding that has to be adjusted, and that's how you get it done. But that's if I have number one infrastructure priority, it is the Sioux locks, and we talked about that all the way through the run up to the election, and that hasn't changed. Now we're into the how do we get it done phase, and what it does, or how that happens, is you inform your fellow congressmen and congresswomen. They may not understand what the Sioux locks is, but if you explain it to them in such a way that they realize that a factory in their district may shut down, if the Sioux lock shuts down, then that gets their attention. So it's about explaining to people where they have skin in the game in this particular situation. So that's the Sioux locks.
Thank you. All right, we lobbed a couple of softballs at you at the beginning, so now we'll move into. Apparently there's this thing out there called the Affordable Care Act. There's a little bit of buzz and apparently a few questions that came out. Also, a lot of questions regarding things like Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, and it sounds like, excuse me, those are all tying in together. In your crystal ball, really, what do you see happening with the Affordable Care Act and the future of Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security? Are they tied into that?
They were. That's an interesting question. The answer is yes and no.
Okay, thanks.
There are some places where they're tied together because money was taken from Medicare to pay for the Affordable Care. Now that wasn't supposed to happen, but they did. So they tied it together when it shouldn't. We have the responsibility to ensure that our citizens are not only safe, but they have quality, available, affordable health care. We talked about this already. We know when the government tried to do this starting 6 years ago or so, it didn't work. It hasn't worked because it has just added more bills, it has added taxes, it has added stress to the core of our country, which is small business. It's forced small businesses to make a choice of either expanding their business or maintaining under a cap of employees to control. Do more people have insurance? Yes. Do more people have available health care? I think that is an interesting question to have. We will have an affordable health care in the future going forward that patient, doctor-centered relationships with the federal government backing out of saying this is right, this is wrong. So now that as far as Medicare, Medicaid, how many states took the Medicaid expansion? 30 something, right? And now the question is, what do we do going forward? Do we do block grants? Do we do per capita? That's to be, if you will, figured out. There are a lot of this is what is work in progress. So for me to stand up here and give you definitive things right now, it may not turn out that way to be exactly as how I said it. But the end game is there is going to be health care. that is designed to promote healthy lifestyles, take care of people in need, whether it be pre-existing conditions, make sure that small businesses, large businesses can give that kind of compensation, if you will, their savings accounts, whatever it happens to be, to their employees, make it portable in nature, and make sure that people aren't forced to make decisions based upon a poor government program ill-conceived, unfunded.
Thank you, Congressman. The next question's on energy. We had several questions asked on energy and asked in many ways, but a common theme was your position on line 5.
Well, my position on line 5 is pretty much exactly the way it is on flying airplanes. You don't do anything that's unsafe, but at the same time, you make sure that your decisions on whether anything is safe are based on data, are based on transparency, are based on all the parties working together. So from my perspective, if line 5 needs to be shut down, you shut it down. If you don't, if there's no reason just to shut it down for shutting it down's sake, that doesn't reflect, in my mind, rational decision making, because there's a downside and there's an upside to everything, but you have to take a look at what are the risks. I'm not going to do anything that's going to risk our waters, pure and simple. But I'm in a position now, which I wasn't in when I talked to you before the election. I can ask questions as the congressman and get people to come and sit down and talk with me, and I'm fairly adept at holding people's feet to the fire when it comes to getting an answer, and not let anybody just kind of throw some data at you without basis. So I tend to look at all these things rationally.
All right, thank you, Congressman. So we have a new president. There were a few questions around that, and since you're not him, we thought we'd direct the question in a different direction. But part of Congress's constitutional responsibility is oversight of the executive branch. So what are you hearing from your colleagues about how this process will look, and I guess really what's the conversation in Washington about this?
Well, the conversation in Washington is simply, we have the Constitution as a framework by which we can make our decisions and decide who does what. There is no fourth branch of government called the bureaucracy. That wasn't in the Constitution. So we have to get back to understanding who does what, what's the intent, how laws are passed. As Ronald Reagan said, there's nothing closer to eternal life than a government program. That's not a way going forward, because if you don't start putting sunset on regulations, if you don't start holding people accountable, you can spend all your time worrying about things that in the end, when you look at it, is this, are we looking at 100% of the problem? Are we looking at 50%? Is this a 5%? Where does this get? It's all the way back to that priorities. So the dialogue and the interactions, between the different branches of our government, we have the document, the Constitution to abide by, and that's what we do. Whether you're the president, the Congress, or anybody else for that matter.
Thank you, Congressman. I know we're nearing the end of your time, so this is going to be our last question. What do you think about Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos as a Michigander, and do you support school choice vouchers in education?
The education system that we have in this country, I believe, was designed to ensure that, let's just take the K through 12, to do the best possible to ensure that when a person reaches the end of 12th grade and is roughly 18 years old, that they're prepared as best as possible to take that next first step in their life. And that next first step could be college, could be trade school, could be the military, could be the workforce, could be anything except just kind of, sitting around. Because at 18, you've got a lot of things going on inside you, and you've got a lot of potential to do absolutely spectacular things. So my youngest daughter is a career elementary teacher, and she now works part-time for the University of Illinois in evaluating their student teachers. and how they're gonna do when they get in the classroom. So I had some interesting conversations with her. But it boils down to, we need to teach skill sets and philosophies and show these young boys and girls, and that's what they are, young boys and girls, that there's some great opportunities out there, but you have to grab a hold of them. You have to be curious. That's what good teachers do. So whether it's in the private schools, the public schools, that's the education system. How many of you went here? How many of you went to a religious-based elementary school or high school? Okay, you went there for a reason. Chances are that your family believed that they wanted your educational experience to have some kind of a theological basis. That's a decision. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a little town that the public school system was spectacular. It happened that all my teachers and coaches were all World War II and Korea vets. So they had expectations about standards of behavior and standards of excellence in the classroom. And I knew if I was in trouble at home, if I was in trouble at school, I was in more trouble at home, because my parents and my teachers and coaches all talked. That to me is what an education looks like. That's what an education system looks like. So however you get there, that's the goal.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Congressman Bergman today. Your round of applause.
Can I close with one comment? Folks, we're all in this together. We really are. And thank you for coming. Thank you. I look forward to our future dialogues and our communications. And let's stay focused on all the goodness that we have and all the blessings that we have in this country. Because if we ever lose that, we will have challenges that will be greater than they could be if we just look each other in the eye and say, I may disagree with you, but boy, that's really, we can work together here to accomplish something great. So thank you very much. God bless you all, and God bless America.